This is a Podfire production.
Hi, I'm Ryan and welcome to the Neuronirvana podcast, where we dive into everything to do with mental health and well-being. Anything that can improve your life, we're here to talk about. All right, cool. Welcome to Neuronirvana. We have Michael Burford here today and Hemi Hara. These guys grew up together in New Zealand. Michael, we'll call it Guy because I know Hemi calls him Guy, and that's how I know him as Guy. So if you hear us call him Guy, that's his middle name.
Good clarification on that one.
Yep. So if we say Guy, there's not a guy out here you can't see. It's actually this guy. So you've created a lot of businesses in engineering, construction, recently invested in cryptocurrency, metaverse. Is there anything that you don't do?
Not that I found yet.
Yeah. No. Okay. Awesome. Great. And then what are some other businesses that you're involved in at the moment? I know you were looking to do some charities, so that's where I first piqued my interest with bringing onto the show, because I know you were talking about charities to mental health, and we know Neuronirvana is all about mental health. So can you tell us a little bit about that charity that you're...
Yeah, for sure. No, thanks very much for starters for inviting me on. It's a real honor to be able to represent the mental health side of things with Neuronirvana. So I've come from a bit of a background in a whole bunch of different businesses. My first one being building inspections with a business called Oz the Labs. We've grown that to a national business now, which is pretty cool. From there, and that was when I was 22, 23, I set up a structural engineering business, and then I dabbled in a whole bunch of different things from online platforms, social media, and all that sort of stuff between then and sort of 2018, where I 2017, I sort of semi-retired at 29 before my 30th birthday, which is pretty cool. And then I did a bit of travel. I went over to Vegas and, sort of lived up the sort of retirement life and doing that side of things, and turned into a bit of an alcoholic and got fat and ended up putting on probably an extra 25 kilos heavier than I was just from the lifestyle, which then I sort of realized was just not good. You sort of got to wake up in the morning and have a purpose to live. And I sort of lost that when I sort of did that whole attempt to be cool and semi-retire and all that sort of shit. And so my business was sort of running itself, and I was waking up and I was cracking beers in the morning and having a barbecue and sort of just looking at my life going, all right, now what? It's not very cool. And so then I sort of sat down with my wife one day and said, look, we just got this R&D grant from one of my businesses I was working on. And I said, what do we do with the money? Do we invest it back into the business and get going again? Or do we just buy a house? Or, what are your thoughts? And she sort of said, well, you sort of need something to do. You're crazy.
Yeah. I love that you say that, because I brought on a great guest, Adam Hollyoak. You guys should know he's an ex-cricketer. So obviously after cricket, he went into property development and made a heap of money and did the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
And he said that was the worst period of his life.
It is.
It was, because you don't have a purpose, you don't have a drive, you don't have goals, nothing to work towards, then that, your whole routine goes out, everything goes out of whack, and then that affects your mental health, your physical health, and everything like that. Everything. So I think that's real important, because a lot of people that we talk to now, right, are all about, I just wanted to retire, I just want to make enough money to retire, but it's not till you get there that you realise that's not really the answer.
Yeah, everyone chases financial freedom, but they don't actually understand the sort of the side effects that come from that, Once you sort of get your financial freedom, then it's like, well, I don't have anything to work for anymore because I have passive income and I don't need to I can retire and wake up whenever I want and do whatever I want. But as you said, the whole routine thing is what keeps us driven.
Yeah.
If we wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning, go to the gym, whatever it might be, and start your day like that, one, your head's cleared, you've got the sort of endorphin release from the gym and exercise and that sort of routine that you sort of develop. And but if you don't have that, your life is just, it becomes a mess. It really does. And so, yeah, as sort of from that sort of point, I went off and found a CEO and brought him into the business and sort of did some consultancy and sort of developed the big picture plan. And then from there, I found an investor and he came on board. He made all his money through cryptocurrency. And so he threw everything in and I threw my businesses in, and we created this sort of big...
That's Caleb, yes?
Correct, yeah. And set up this big business that we kind of have now. And we've got everything from supermarkets and restaurants and, as I said, social media platforms for specific niche, social media and e-commerce platforms in one package, and architecture, engineering, urban planning. The dream behind those businesses there is to then start developing smart cities, which we're currently working on at the moment. Hopefully we can have that sort of foot in the ground of that, developing these agri-tech farming systems that can produce 11,000 kilos of food a day, and then the waste from the farms can be turned into a biomass fuel, which then produces electricity to then power either the farms or 2,000 houses or potentially 10,000 crypto mines, which can produce 1 Bitcoin every 3 days if programmed correctly.
Yeah.
So then that will create a closed circuit system that will then develop these smart city systems, these smart city plans that we sort of have to then roll out across Australia and the world if everything works out well, which is sort of what we're working on, which I think is going to be pretty cool because the way things are going, I mean, I'm a bit paranoid and a bit scared about where the future's heading at the moment.
Yeah, definitely, 100%.
I think we're on a roller coaster, man.
Sustainability is definitely the key. And
Yeah.
so I did read somewhere that one of your people you looked up to was like Elon Musk and the people like that. And I know they're definitely working towards.
It's an interesting thing, right? Elon Musk is this hero of today because of free speech. Like he just bought Twitter yesterday.
For $42 billion.
Yeah, I know, right?
Who's got that type of cash lying around on my Twitter?
Yeah, it's fascinating. But the fascinating thing about him, right, is you think, oh yeah, Elon Musk is this great, amazing person, but what he's doing, like thinking from the flip side of things, is he's creating the biggest surveillance system we have around the world with all these Teslas, with all the cameras they got. He's planting microchips into people's heads. I'm sure the intention is to help people with their sort of neurodisease, if you're going to connect the brain to your spine, if you've got a sort of spinal injury, right? You're paralyzed, and you can reconnect those two things. So it's good to that, but there's also the negative side of things. But I think that came from the whole him trying to stop artificial intelligence, and nobody would listen to him. So then the flip side of that was, well, if you can't beat him, join him. And if I can get artificial intelligence into us first, then we can actually understand how damaging this is going to be and actually hopefully stop it.
Yeah, like
I
obviously
hope that's what it is.
Yeah, but there's going to be a flip side to all technology, and we all know that. You know what I mean? Like, so you can use it for good, you can use it for bad. And I know that's why psychology back early was something that they tried to suppress because they didn't want people using it for bad, but you kind of needed it for good. So it was like, and I'm sure, or we know now, like with some media, I mean, they are using it to manipulate us and to make us think. So there is that side of it, but then you've got to learn to use it for good and try to block that out. Because if you're worrying about that all the time, then we're not going to grow as a species.
Yeah, and that's the fascinating, as you just said, the whole media side of things. Now Elon Musk owns one of the biggest media platforms in the world, privately owned.
But I'd rather it be him than some of the people that are currently owning him. So that's my little take on it. But well, I'll mention Hemi. So Hemi is, well, grew up with you, and I met Hemi, 5-6 years, or a long time ago now, and that's how I ended up meeting yourself. And we just thought it'd be fun to bring Hemi along. Like, Hemi is very intelligent. There's a lot of conversations I've had with him over the years.
Mind-blowing conversations.
Yeah, and he's always adds value. So I think it's great that you come along, Hemi. And so Hemi does a lot of videography when it comes to creativity, marketing, that type of stuff. I know he does a lot of stuff for you, and he's got other clients as well. So I welcome as well, Hemi. And
Thanks, Ryan.
yeah, no worries. And
wait a minute, you got other clients?
Was I not supposed to start that?
Not with the time you give me.
Yeah. You said after 18 hours you're allowed to work on someone else. Yeah. So let's just dial it back a bit too, and we'll say like nothing's really off limits here. So feel free to say fuck, shit, whatever you want, or talk about whatever it is we're going to talk about. And we can edit it out later if we want to, but we'll try not to. So where did you guys grow up, and tell us a little bit about your childhoods? We'll start with Hemi.
So I grew up both of us grew up in Christchurch. I know grew up other places beforehand, but my formative years were in Christchurch. Christchurch was a bit of a storm of a city. Everything was kind of in reach from a very young age, and on the flip side of that, everything was also out of reach. So you could have big ideas, and it happens now. Yeah, big ideas, but you just didn't have the money to get there. It didn't have the connections to get there. It didn't have the contacts to get there, and it wasn't. And for me, I found myself lost in my ideas. I found I found myself even unable to ask the right questions to get to the places I actually wanted to be. And it wasn't until I actually left Christchurch and come across to Australia where I actually felt like I started to grow and to escape. A system I come to understand that I'd locked myself into.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it wasn't until probably the last 5 years that I realized that it was myself that locked myself into the system. I wasn't held back by it at all.
Yeah. Okay. So are you talking about like school, or are you just talking about in general, or?
I'm talking about everything. I blamed a lot of things on school. I blamed a lot of things on growing up. I blamed a lot of things on my childhood, my restrictions.
That victim mentality, we've all been there. I've definitely been there, so I understand
100%. And it wasn't until I left New Zealand and started looking back that I could see, from my perspective, that so many of my friends were still sitting there having the same conversations, waiting for the government to change their life. And I've used that explanation many times now, and I can still look back now, and I can still see people sitting in the same position that they were 10, 15 years ago, having the same conversations, still waiting for the government to come along and change their situation for them.
And the funny thing is, the flip side of this, and I heard someone talk about this recently, and it really resonated with me, is the same people that want the government to do all this stuff for you, but then when the government takes control and does something like mandates a vaccine, then they all of a sudden they don't want the government. You know what I mean? Like, you can't have it both ways. Either the government does everything for you, and then they can decide like things like that, or the government does nothing for you and you have all the freedom. So it's kind of, does that make sense? Yeah. So it's kind of like you gotta take ownership of your own life and not worry about the government. And then when stuff like this comes up, then it doesn't affect you as much because you're not relying on the government, and then they can't twist you to conform to them because you're not relying on them at one little bit. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think for a lot of years for myself, I didn't know how to take control of my own life. I think I'm still just starting to get a handle on that right now.
Yeah,
like,
okay.
I did not learn those skills. And it seems stupid. But
do you think that was because of an upbringing? Like, was that through your parents
it
or
it may have been a cross between a religious upbringing.
Yep. So just clarify for people that don't know.
I was brought up in a Mormon family, and it was nothing I bucked. It was nothing I pushed hard back against until sport took over when I was about 13 years old. But I didn't replace that, and I didn't know what to replace it with once I came out. And I also knew too much. So I wasn't ready to be told what to do, how to do it, how to think it, how to understand it. So I had to do it the hard way. I had to do a lot of things the hard way.
Don't we all? Amen to that.
Yeah, but I didn't know how to get out of my own way, and I think that was one of the biggest problems. And I'm still learning it right now. But getting out of my own way has really been what's helped me get forward right now.
Okay, so there'll be a lot of people at home, I know myself and maybe yourself, are resonating with what you're saying. Like, yeah, I'm always in my own way. So is there any, like, one particular thing, or is it a number of things? Like, what is it that you did, or what was it that sort of clicked that you were like, you know what, I'm in my own way, and give some people some tools that they can take home now and start implementing them?
I would set hard boundaries very quickly, and I wouldn't step outside of those boundaries.
Okay.
So whether they weren't intentional boundaries either. They were, on reflection, they were, some were set out of fear, some were set out of financial position, and some were set because I didn't think I could do better or do more. Somewhere I knew I could, but I was maybe I, in thinking about it now, maybe I set them because if I set them there, I wouldn't fail.
So what sort of boundaries are you talking about?
Achievement boundaries.
Give us an example.
I was scared to grow and expand a company, purely out of the thought that it would be a bigger failure than what it would be if it was smaller. And it seems absolutely stupid right now.
No, that, you know what I mean?
No, looking back at it, it sounds ridiculous, but it was real.
Yeah,
and that was a real hurdle I had to overcome.
So when you're saying you put a boundary around that, how's that a boundary, or is that opening a boundary?
I asked the questions here, mate.
Sorry.
Nah,
This guy.
I think the mental block I put on myself, actually being able to expand further, was put there as an excuse to not get in and not do the work.
yeah.
Okay, I could be seen to be doing enough. I felt like I was doing enough, and I didn't feel like I had to tip over that edge and do more. And it wasn't until I found fitness. And in finding fitness, I found a new level, an old familiar level of accountability that I'd let go out of my life for a long time.
100%.
And as I found fitness, and as I had a whole series of small individual goals, the big goals got smaller and the walls came down. And then I couldn't answer to myself why they were there in the first place.
Yeah, I know for me personally, like, exercise and gym is the glue that holds me together. Like, once that area of my life, like recently I've had injury, as soon as my exercise goes, like my mental toughness, because you are challenging it every day, you grow. It's like a muscle. Like, you grow that grit, that determination, and that kind of withers away. And then your diet goes away because you're not striving towards an exercise goal. So you kind of, you start eating a bit more, crappy food, and then, in the afternoons, I'm a little bit bored, so I might have a beer, you know what I mean? Like, everything kind of evolves around, well, for me personally, evolves around fitness, and I'm not the only one. So I can't recommend fitness and, gym, or it doesn't have to be gym. It can be, cross country or bloody CrossFit. Everyone's, CrossFit or whatever it is but it is the glue that, moving your physiology is being known to, greatly enhance, your mindset, greatly enhance every part. We are meant to move. Like, we come from, a lineage of, we're always active and always moving. And now a lot of us are in office, we're not moving. So that activity is even more so important for us and our mental health. So it's no surprise that is.
I found a position with fitness in my life and in my lifestyle where I could use it as a reset throughout the day, whether I'd done a 8-hour day or a 23-hour day, that hour or that time I took for myself to go to the gym and reset my mind really helped me set up what I was going to do next, even though it had no connection to it at all other than being in my own head, being in my own space.
It's also a form of meditation too. Like, when you go in the gym, it's sort of as Arnold Schwarzenegger says, that was his meditation. It was focusing on that one muscle as you're contracting and the likes of doing exercise and that sort of stuff. I did a similar thing after I sort of realized I became an alcoholic and sort of did the retirement thing. I was like, well, I need to lose some weight. So I got into cage fighting.
Yeah.
And so jumped in.
There's no running away from that.
I thought, well, if I don't push myself hard here, I'm going to get my ass kicked in the ring, in the cage.
There's no more better inspiration than that. And I've been there too. Like, I've had a few fights in the ring, and like, my level of accountability goes through the roof, because it's like, I don't want to lose, for one, and two, I don't want to have to say at the end of it, well, I could if I didn't have them beers or I didn't have them, food or whatever. So, 100% agree with that one for sure.
Good accountability.
Yeah. So your story sounds a little bit different to Hemi. So you left school at 16.
Yeah.
But it sounds like it took Hemi a while to set them boundaries and to let them walls drop down. But you jumped straight into business, and so what made you less fearful? I suppose, like, heck, you grew up in the same place. Obviously, had a different upbringing. But what was it that? How did you have less fear and have that drive? Because a lot of people out there will be wondering, like, how do I set up a business? Like, how do I start? Like, where did it all start for you? And give us some insight on what to do. And
so for me, I left home when I was 16. I left school when I was 16, and moved into a mate's house, and I got a job with what was like the Italian mafia in quotation marks of Christchurch, and so I started running up pizza shops for those guys. Then they set up nightclubs, and then got into a whole bunch of trouble along that sort of lines. We were making party pills and getting into all that sort of mischief, as you can imagine. We had black limousines picking us up every weekend, taking us to all the nightclubs, had fake IDs and that sort of stuff. So I think that sort of aspect of my life started from a young age. I got rid of that party stage of my life. You know, what most people sort of start, 18, 19, 20. I started when I was 16, so I got that out of my system. And then I sort of learned how to run business through the Italian guys, and how to make money and how to hustle and, buy this and sell that and, just get creative. And so that sort of opened my mind to the limitless opportunities of making money. From there, I ended up getting back into study again when I sort of settled down and found myself a good Christian girlfriend at the time. She was absolutely awesome. She sort of helped keep me accountable. And then I started studying and did my sort of personal training. And so that got me back into the fitness, and that sort of helped that side of things. I also did a fashion design course, which was part of a thing I sort of wanted to start with a mate of mine who ended up committing suicide. And so then I tried to finish that dream and then realized how much hard work goes into making clothes and competition with international sweatshops and that sort of stuff. So realized there's a lot of hard work and not enough money. So that sort of didn't follow through with that in the end. And then one day Hemi sort of sent me a message after he'd moved to Australia, and he goes, "Look, I'll pay you for your flights. Come on over and come do stuff over here." And so I sort of took him up on that opportunity and crashed on his couch for a while, and we carried on the party thing for a few years, didn't we? And
we've all been there.
Continued on the chaos, and once again found myself a nice, good Christian girlfriend that was sort of my sanctuary from our own house. and through her and her dad, I ended up setting up my first business when I was 22. I ended up getting married when I was 2010 to 22, 23 as well. So that was a good sort of accountability thing and sort of settling down and sort of really focusing on business and life and my future and that side of things, which was good.
So she's been a very big advocate and asset for you, like with your businesses and helping and
she's my
supporting
rock. Like, cause my head is way up here, right? She's my anchor.
Yeah.
So she
you're in the stars, and she's like, "Come back here."
Yeah, pretty much, which is good. I need that. I need like
yin and yang, eh?
Exactly. My CEO is the same. Like we call my CEO the handbrake, right? But my wife is my rock. She keeps me really, really solidly grounded, and it's and she always plays devil's advocate. Lets me be me. Lets me do exactly what I want to do whenever I want to do it, however I want to do it, with all the travel and all sorts of stuff and the chaotic lifestyle that I have. But she says, "Hey, what about this and what about that? And have you thought about this and have you thought about that?" Which sort of helps me process my ideas before I just dive straight in and figure it out along the way, which is cool, especially in the crypto side of things too, because she's heavily into the NFT side of things.
Oh,
she says,
yeah,
"Hey,
nice.
check out this project and check out that project. And these guys are doing something really interesting, and you need to meet this person. Go speak to him." And so it's really cool to sort of have like a partner in both business but also in life, who sort of understands me and gets me and lets me be me, which is the most important thing for me.
Yeah.
But at the same time, she's my rock. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's really good to see, because I see a lot of people out there with their partner, and they just say if their business takes off, and their partner feels a bit of insecurity around that or a bit like inadequate, and they'll like try and pull the other person down. Whereas it seems to me like you're both helping each other grow and move up further.
It's definitely not been easy. I mean, I'm a hard person to live with, and a hard person to do business with, as I'm sure Hemi can sort of tell you at the same time. I mean, he's made a few comments in the past about how chaotic my life is. I'm a fucking tornado that just comes riling through, and he was like, "All right, let's structure that tornado and try and put something to this," right?
That's not natural from my end. He's just that much worse.
And so for her, like, we've been married 12 years this year, and so for her, like, there's a lot of learning curves along the way, trying to figure out who we are and how we work best. But we're sort of coming to that sort of even playing field now, where we sort of both understand what each other need, and I mean it's taken a long time, but at the same time it's now every day just gets better and better. And you sort of need that person who's like, when you go into a relationship, you need someone who is your partner, not just your missus or your trophy or whatever it might be. You need someone that's going to grow with you, and somebody that thinks along the same sort of way, somebody that can is on the journey with you, as opposed to somebody who's there as a sidekick sort of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
That's the best way to word it, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. So we were married at 22, 23. So how old are you now, sorry?
I'm 34.
34, so you've been married 12 years. So I'm single at 37, so you got way more experience than me. So please explain to me, what are
ladies, you heard that.
If you could name a few things that could benefit people when it comes to relationships, what's worked for you and what's worked in your relationship, and what are some key points or aspects that you feel are important for building a solid foundation and a good relationship like you have with you and your wife?
Well, one of those things is obviously trust. I mean, you have to have that trust in a relationship. You have to have the openness. You have to have that communication, which obviously develops the trust and the openness as well. You have to let the person know exactly who you are and what you want in life at the very, very start, and sort of where you're heading, and keep that communication open, keep that going. Because if you outgrow that other person, as you said before, you know, they're going to try and either one, pull you down, or you're going to outgrow that, and then, you know, that season is going to pass. And it's hard to build that trust. Because, you know, we are wild animals, especially us men. You know?
I don't know about you.
Obviously, it sounds cliche, but trust is the biggest thing, and through trust is the communication. You need to know you need to let them know how you're feeling, and keep that constant development going.
I think that's interesting, because a lot of times I think in relationships people assume the other person knows how they're feeling, or assumes the other person gets it, but we're not fucking that's right. We're not mind readers, right? Yeah. So many, like, miscommunication, that has to be 90% of fights, and you know what I mean? Like there's some sort of miscommunication or like misunderstanding around something, and you know, sometimes you have to spell it out like a 6-year-old, you know what I mean? Like, especially male and female, we're so friggin' different. Communication's definitely a good one. Yeah,
and building together. Whether it's, you know, your fitness, your life, your health, your business, whatever it might be, is making sure that you're a team, and working as a team along the way too. Because if you're not working as a team, and I've stuffed this up a lot, but it's bringing the other person into what you're doing, which is sort of what my wife Lisa and I are doing at the moment, is the whole NFT side of things. You know, we've got a shared vision now, whereas prior to that we both lived two different existing lives. She's a top dog trainer in Australia with scent detection. Right, and that's her area, and that's not really of interest to me with the whole dog side of things. I'm in the business with all my different businesses and traveling and doing that side of things. But now we sort of found this common ground with cryptocurrency and NFTs. I mean, she's been trading shares since she was 16 years old, so she's always been into the sort of investing side of things. And so now we've sort of come together in this journey, and you know, our home office, we've got two desks side by side, and she does her thing and I do my thing, and we're sort of working on the same sort of projects together. And I'm getting advice from her because she's more, as I said, more into it than I am at the moment. She's more into the communities and stuff. So that's been really, really cool and really, really fun. And so having that sort of shared vision and sort of finding that sort of common ground definitely makes relationships a hell of a lot easier.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So there's not, you're not in each other's pockets or nothing too much? You just, especially you do a lot of travel on that as well, I suppose. So.
Keeping that opportunity to have that ability. So for example, I've got a business lounge that I'm a part of, and so when I need that sort of space, I can just jump into the city and work out of there, and that sort of gives me that space. But then I also travel a lot for work, which, you know, time apart helps you miss your partner. And so not always being each other's face is obviously beneficial to the relationship, so that you can have your own personal space too and do your own thing. So travel does help with that a little bit, providing I'm not away for too long at a time. Usually I spend 1 week a fortnight up in Brisbane here, where I'm based out of, I live in Sydney.
Yeah. So
that's a little bit too much, 1 week a fortnight, but trying to make that as effective as possible, so I don't have to do it as often as possible. So my business travels, that is, and then sort of get home and you know, date day is another very important thing. Making sure you have that sort of either day or sort of at least an evening dedicated to each other, so that you can have that time to hang out, just you and her. And easier said than done, because I don't have kids, and I also don't plan to have kids. Whereas people with kids, you know, obviously that's not as easy, but sort of trying to set that time apart to spend with each other is also very important.
So was that a conscious decision at the start of the relationship? You both didn't want kids, or was that something?
No, I wanted 6 kids, right? At the very, very start.
With your lifestyle easy, what do you mean you got plenty of time?
I know, right? So at the very, very start, I said to her, I was like, look, I want 6 kids. And she's like, yeah, I can talk them down to 2, right? And because for me, it was, I love that family time, sitting around the table and saying, hey, how was your day? You know, we did that when I was kids, and I really treasure that. As opposed to sitting in front of the TV and having the TV dinner, right? It's disassociative. You know, you're not working, so you're not communicating, and you're not having that real family time. But sitting around the table for me was a very, very cool, important thing. Growing up, and you know, sharing your day and your experiences and what's been going on, and having that real family time, right? So I think that's a very important thing. One with families. So I wanted that, and then I got a dog. I was like, fuck, this dog's a lot of hard work. So that sort of
I'm
made me
gonna
think,
feed it.
imagine what kids are going to be like, you know? Like if I think a dog's hard work, imagine what kids, because I got really short temper. I mean, with everything that's going on in life, I snap, you know, and I've had a lot of anger issues sort of growing up and especially in business and trying to work on that temperament was not easy, which is where the sort of fitness side of things comes into it and the meditation side of things where I really struggled with that one, but dabbled in meditation quite a bit too, which sort of brought my temper down. But yeah, having a dog was a lot of work, and I really realized that sort of brought out my sort of made me realize how angry I sort of got and how quickly I snapped. I thought, man, kids are going to be a lot of hard work. Can I actually put up with kids? My wife thought the same thing. She's like, man, you got a temper on you. You know, like if you think the dog's hard work, imagine what kids are going to be like. And so I thought about that a lot.
Yeah.
And and sort of, yeah. Then one day sort of decided, you know what, let's make that permanent.
Yeah. Okay. And what did your wife?
She was with it too. She was all for it.
Yeah.
You know, just based on my lifestyle and the career that I sort of want to have, and you know, my legacy is my business and what I'm trying to develop. You know, the whole smart city side of things, and you know, also into space rockets as well. I advise a space rocket company, and so this career and this sort of I got a 1,000-year plan, and that 1,000-year plan is to really help us as humanity rethink the way we live and what our cities look like and that side of things too. And so it's going to, I mean, I'm not ever going to see the end of this legacy, obviously.
No.
I mean, we're getting close to that technology, but not quite yet.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's a really important distinction that you've found, that, yeah, that's a tough decision to make, to not have kids, you know what I mean? Like, that's something that a lot of couples would probably like struggle with. But I think it's important for people to know that want to get into business or whatever. Like, it's not easy if you want to have a legacy. Like, you know, kids may not be an option because it's so hard to be able to do both. You know, what I mean?
couldn't do the things I'm doing with kids, not at all. I wouldn't be able to travel as much. I wouldn't be able to do the business. And
well, you could, but then would you be there enough for your kids? You know what I mean? Exactly. So I think that's real responsible and mature of you.
Kids are the biggest investment you can make.
Yeah,
like, they are the biggest investment you make, because that kid could be the person that creates that legacy, right? And if you have that kid and you don't bring him up right and doesn't have the right morals and ethics and sort of mindset that you impart onto that kid, or you should impart onto that kid, then who's that kid going to grow up to be? And is he going to be the next Dr. Evil, or is he going to be the next Elon Musk?
So can you attribute like your drive, your determination, your thought, and that to your parents instilled that into you, or is that something that you feel like you've kind of gone your own way with?
It's actually quite interesting. So my mum and dad still married today. I was brought up in a Christian family, and absolutely amazing, beautiful parents. And you know, we went over to Israel as missionaries when I was, I think, 7. And I spent about 4.5 years over there. So I got that sort of spiritual upbringing, and which gave me accountability. And having seen everything over in Israel with my own eyes, you know, so that whole spirituality thing was grounded. Like, you cannot deny it after you know, walking in the footsteps of Jesus, literally, right? Like, and I probably should be dead right now with all the terrorist attacks and everything that was going on over there.
Yeah.
To catch a bus to school every day, and the bus we were on bus number 19, bus number 18 used to blow up once a fortnight. Similar route, except for they went off at the end. I walked out of school one day to see the aftermath, so to see a guy defusing a bomb, you know, going through that whole bomb diffuser process. I'm just sitting there watching him as a sort of 9-year-old kid going, oh, wow, this is cool. You know, the green suit and everything like that.
Yeah, wow.
So that sort of thing sort of really instilled a sense of spirituality into my life, which gave me that accountability and that, I'm not going to rip you off in business because I'm not afraid of you, I'm afraid of God, right? So that sort of gives me that sort of, what do you call it, honesty, sort of the morals in business as well. And that distilled that into me in my life. Then my grandfather's a big entrepreneur, gold mines, construction business. You know, he built, I think it was 9,000 houses in Christchurch, New Zealand. He's done a lot of really interesting things in his life, although he wasn't really there for his kids. And I sort of experienced the effects of that through my mum and sort of her upbringing, hearing her stories. Then my grandfather on the other side, you know, is a really well accomplished orthodontist. So he's had his own business too. And then my dad, ex-army, so had the whole discipline side of things there. And his work ethics, and like he he gets jobs because people know his what's the word? Ethics. They say, look, I know Mike. I know he's an honest, hardworking man. From reputation, here's the contract.
Yeah, cool.
Don't even ask about price. Here's the job.
Yeah,
because we trust you, right? So that's what my dad is, and yeah. So I think those traits came through. My mom's a super spiritual woman too. Like she's a cowgirl for God. I mean, like she goes nuts, man. She'll come up and say, "Hey, do you know Jesus?"
Hallelujah.
She's amazing, man. She's an absolutely beautiful, kind-hearted woman. And same with my in-laws too, sort of that mentored me through the whole business side of things because I ended up buying my in-laws' business. My father-in-law did the dilapidation reports, and that was my first business, Oz the Laps. And so I bought his business, Building the Laps, after he sort of mentored me through. And those guys, man, super spiritual, heart of gold, and you know they would just give their last dollar and the shirt off their back if you ask for it, sort of thing.
Yeah,
they're absolutely amazing people. So growing up around people like that and being mentored by people like that have sort of got me to where I am today. You know,
yeah, that's awesome because we definitely need more entrepreneurs and business people like yourself because you see a lot of people, they get the status and it goes to their head and, you know, there's a lot of studies where, you know, people of in position of power, I think that Harvard study that you heard about the Harvard study about the fake prison.
No.
So what they did is they got a heap of like 50 people, right? And they had to like pull out of a hat and it was either prisoner or it was guard, you know what I mean? And they knew this was like a study, like they knew this was not real. And they had prisoners and they had guards, and the people that were guards, even though they knew it was a study, they knew it was like not real, the power went to their head and they started like beating on the prisoners, and they had to stop the study because they were beating the prisoners that bad.
Yeah, wow.
And it just showed how, because like status and power has been such a big thing for us for our survival, you know what I mean? Like you had to be the toughest guy in the tribe to survive, you know what I mean? To get even mate or to survive. So people, when they get power, they try to abuse it to keep their power because it's installed into us as for you know, hundreds of thousands of years. So we need to be very aware of that and be able to curve that and know when that's just coming up in our lives for people that are, you know, going up in power and status.
Yeah.
You see it in the corruption when you see like governments and stuff like that. Like that's just the same thing. Like I feel like they've gone into business or government or whatever for the right intentions, but once they've got that power, that them urges have come over them, they haven't been aware enough or haven't got the ethics or the upbringing that maybe you've had that have been able to curb that. So I think that's I think it's a testament to yourself, man, and congratulations. That's
Cheers,
awesome.
Man. That sort of leads me on to the discussion of stoicism. One of the sort of best things I ever got into was stoicism. It's there's a really good book by a guy called Ryan Holiday.
He's written a lot of good books.
He's written a lot of good books, man. And so Ego is the Enemy is one specifically based on that topic there.
Okay, yeah.
And it just talks about how power does get to you and corrupts you, and it is something that destroys people. And if you get into business, their business or relationships, you know, because you think you're the alpha male in the relationship where you should be equal partners. You know, ego is the worst thing that can happen to anybody. You know, like it really destroys your character, and stoicism is a really good thing. So the 4 stoic virtues are wisdom, courage, temperance, and of course I got a mind blank on the last one. Wisdom, courage, temperance, and
what's the third one?
Temperance. So it's like a everything in moderation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say temperament. I was like, have you talked about temperament?
Yeah, temperance. So moderation, and oh my goodness, I'm having a mind blank on the last one. It'll come to me. But going through stoicism, I think has really, really helped me both in my personal life and my business life, and really sort of helps you sort of slow down a bit and really appreciate the present moment, and your relationships and your blessings that you have, and the courage to stand up for the things you believe in, but also the mentality to also be humble and to realize that you don't know everything. Moderation, I think, is another big thing for me, especially with alcohol. You know, like I really enjoy it at the end of the day. Like I'm a wine fiend. I love wine. Really passionate about it. But
we're currently doing a 75 hard, so no drinking for 75 days. And
that's probably
me and Guy struggling. Hemi's like, this is easy.
Yeah. So I love my wine, and so moderation has been a really, really a good thing. You know, I sort of almost wanted to get the number 3 tattooed on my wrists because nothing good happens after glass number 3. So Stoicism, I highly recommend getting into that too. Like it just gives you peace. It really does, inside and out. It just gives you peace.
Okay, so on that note, what are some books, practices, or something that people can take home now to look into this and to help them through their journey of life?
I would say anything from Ryan Holiday, because he is one of the biggest advocates for Stoicism at the moment. Right, so if you just search his books, Stillness is the Key. Oh man, that is probably my number 1 most recommended book. And
I think the only one I've read from him is The Obstacle is the Way. That's
a good one too.
That's the only
That's
one
a
I've
very good
read.
one.
So Stillness, I'll put that on my 50,000 books I want to read.
Yeah. So Stillness is the Key is a really, really good book. It sort of takes into, it does sort of case studies on people, for example, like Tiger Woods and what developed Tiger Woods as a person. And he had a really rough upbringing with a freaking insane dad who was just so aggressive and just...
Towards him and his golf, or just in general?
Him in general, towards Tiger in general.
Yeah.
And just, how he used to yell abuse at him while he was trying to tee off, calling him absolutely fucking worthless and this and that and the other, because he knew his strings to tug on to really make him, meh.
Yeah.
And he had a keyword, which was, that's enough. But he would never say that's enough, right? Because that was classifying him as a pussy. Right, so he's like,
guys are not like that at all.
Yeah, exactly, right. And so it had some really, really
Exhibit
good
A, us at the gym today.
So highly recommend Stillness is Key, just to sort of give you the overall perspective of what Stoicism is. But then the rest of the books, he's got a book called Lives of the Stoics, and that sort of takes you right back to the very beginning of where Stoicism was. And that was, it's also referenced in the Bible too, how Paul went through Greece and sort of all the people that were sort of talking on the porch, which is where sort of Stoicism started, because they would just sit there and they'd talk philosophy and talk life and what it's all about. And so it's got some really good sort of stories on the history of all the Stoics. And right now I'm reading, I think you're reading it too, Courage is Calling. Yeah. And that's a really good book, especially for now too, because it sort of talks about how
drawing your lines.
Yeah, drawing the lines, and also a case study on that lady who's a nurse. What's her name? And she was the first ever female nurse.
Florence Nightingale.
Yeah, Florence Nightingale. That's one. So a cool case study on her and how her courage made her to who she is as a hero in the whole nursing side of things, being one of the first female nurse that sort of went in there. But then when people said, "No, you can't do that," she's like, "Well, stuff, you're going to do it anyway. These soldiers are dying. I need to help them." And she would go from room to room and see all these people. And,
yeah, I've heard
that
of
was
that.
very, very
Actually, now that
frowned upon. So cool stories like that with a whole courageous side of things, creating you as a cool, honest human being that's out there to make a difference. And so that for me has been really encouraging as well.
Yeah, cool. So I want to talk about mental health and if there's been moments in your life, Hemi, where you felt, depressed, anxious, or felt like, life isn't going the way you're wanting to go, and I'd like to sort of dive into that, and then from that, what did you do to help yourself get out of it and stuff like that. So Hemi, I know I've known you for a while, and we've both had our ups and downs in that time. So
mine's going to lead back toward my introduction.
Yep.
And getting out of my own way.
Yep.
So through setting targets low, setting goals low, and understanding that I've set them well below my capability and missing them because of drinking, missing them because of excuses, missing them because I couldn't be bothered. These things over time started to really add up and take a really massive toll on me. So I found myself in a roller coaster of I see it now as depression, anxiety and depression.
Yeah.
And it was flip-flopping. And it's interesting looking back on Facebook. So you go back to the Facebook stories of today, and I go back and
sometimes I shake my head when I look at my Facebook stuff.
Yeah.
It's a cruel reminder.
There's that.
What was I thinking?
But for me, it's almost a journal.
Mm.
It's almost a journal of what I was going through back then that doesn't exist now.
Yeah.
There were things I can see the roller coasters, and I can jump straight back to that moment because I remember them so clearly. And looking back, I could just stand to the side and get past it. But in the time, it was everything. It was massive. I couldn't get out. I couldn't see a way out. I couldn't see a way around it, and I didn't understand any of it at all. I had no tools for it. And if I did have the tools, I didn't know how they worked, and I didn't know they were applicable there. So I did a lot of years. Although I was always in groups and always around people, I did a lot of years by myself. Whether it was hiding behind drinking, hiding behind partying, hiding behind myself. I did a lot of time by myself in my own head, frustrated that I couldn't work out something so simple sitting in front of me. Yet in my work life, I could see holes in systems everywhere and just have solutions for everybody else. But I could not see the solutions, and I could not take a step back and actually see what was going on for myself. So that was a massive frustration point for me in my life. And it got to the point where my partner at the time walked me in and told me I was depressed and sent me in to get antidepressants. And that was probably the worst part of my life when I got on these antidepressants, because it wasn't an answer. What it did was it clipped the highs and it clipped the lows. So I was on this flat line of nothing, not feeling anything, not getting anywhere. At that point in time, gym was removed from my life due to multiple things, whether it's time, financial, whatever that roller coaster was throwing at me.
Yeah.
I wasn't doing the things that I even realized I needed to be doing. I thought it was just getting along, getting by, making money. But that wasn't fixing anything. So it wasn't until I finally went back into a doctor, and maybe controversial, but he looked at what I was on and the strength of what I was on, and he said, get off it, it's poisoning you.
Yeah.
This isn't what you need. And we went through what I shouldn't be doing, what I was struggling with, what I wasn't. And he basically told me to not in the words go to the gym, but he walked me through what I was missing and what I used to enjoy, what I didn't. And it was funny that I ended up back going to the gym, and in nearly 30 days, my life flipped around.
Yeah, wow. And I can't recommend it enough. And I'm exactly the same. Like, anytime my life's going bad, I can guarantee you that my gym is not where I want it. You know what I mean? Like, 100%.
To isolate that a little bit more, I don't think it was specifically the gym, but what I did was I brought in a voluntary accountability. So work I had to go to. I had to earn money. But gym I didn't have to go to.
Yeah.
I volunteered to be accountable to that. And I think once I volunteered to be accountable to that and I started succeeding at something, that was a little win. And I kept on it. I actually, there were books like Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life, or I can't remember, it was one of his lectures, and he talked about little wins. Aim low, but aim lots.
Yeah. And a lot of people, he talks about, sorry to cut you off there, but there's something I was just listening to him the other day, and he was saying, a lot of us, our egos are too big that we won't bring ourselves down to get that little win because we think it's not enough. Like, I did that little win, it's not going to change my life, so I'm not going to bring myself down to do it. But that's the point. Like, it's to get that momentum up. Them little wins turn into a little bit bigger wins, and you got to get that momentum happening. So it could just be waking up and having a fucking glass of water, right? Like, something that you think is very trivial, but one that does a heap for your hydration, which, your mental clarity, your health. It's all the things that spurt from that one little goal, that one little win. And it has a lot to do with your self respect, because every time you don't do something that you're gonna do, you lose respect for yourself. So if you aim low and you get it, it's building that self respect. Going, you know what, I set a goal and I can achieve it. So yeah, aim fucking heaps to low,
And that was it.
yeah.
Just lots of little targets, and they just started clocking off. And before I knew it, I was aiming way up and way out, and all of these shackles that I sort of felt like I had on me were just gone. Absolutely just sort of fallen away in such a short period of time. And I say short, it was over months, but compared to how long I've been shackled, that was almost my whole life.
Yeah.
So these few months really just let everything kind of drop off and just gain this new momentum, gain this new vision and lease on life. So for me, I had an extremely negative experience with the antidepressants.
Yeah, a lot of people do.
But maybe for me, coming off them was the biggest experience. Because I don't think I would have had as big a jump as what I would have from where I was to where I got to.
Yeah, it's funny looking back on stuff, and it's cliche as it sounds, like there is always connecting the dots. You know what I mean? Like every time something bad quote bad, or something that's happened in my life, later on I look back on it and it was a catalyst towards something. It was there was a purpose or a reason, and that's the whole point of, I think, having faith in the divine universe or in God or in whatever it is that you believe. Like you can't deny that there's something else bigger at play that helps us, guides us, our consciousness,
100%.
Yeah, so that's a massive one for anyone at home. Like you said, that's absolutely awesome. That's a really key point. Is aim low. Just get yourself going. It doesn't have to be much. Just tick off them little boxes and just keep them going.
Get up
keep
and
them
go
going.
for a walk in the morning.
And setting goals. Like I can't. Like perfect example. Like I've had some injuries lately. Like tore my pec. Then when that got better, I popped my back again. And then I went overseas and drinking, and just my life kind of got a bit shaky. And then it wasn't until I just set myself a goal of doing the 75 hard, like in an instant, just setting the fucking goal was enough to click me back, because obviously I've been there before. And one thing about, I think, life is that we got this roller coaster ride, and the purpose is not to have the lows. The purpose is that your rock bottom is now here instead of last time it was here. You know what I mean? So you keep, you know what I mean? So you never go down low, because you're growing, you're getting tools. You know what I mean? So you're always going to have lows, but they're not going to go as low as what they were, because you've got more tools, you've got more strategies, you've got more.
So I think it's really good to point out that it didn't stay on an upward trajectory.
Yeah.
All right. So I got a good solid 10 months of doing well. Things changing, life changing. And then I had situations and scenes change on me again, and other things unexpected just get ripped out from under me. And I found myself in a familiar position and totally being unable to, I felt like I was without the tools to deal with it. And I didn't even know where to look. I didn't know who to ask. I didn't know what to do. And then this one led on to something totally different, was my first major psychedelic experience.
Yeah.
So
I know you personally, Hemi, and I think you struggle to ask for help anyway.
100%.
So whether that's an ego thing or whatever thing, and I think us as men, we tend to want to do it ourselves. We tend to want to, and I'm such a big advocate of just fucking talking to your mate or talking to anyone, doesn't matter who, because when we get caught up in our rumination of our minds, what we think makes sense, but when you actually say the fucking thing out loud, you're like, that doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? You can get caught up in
I think
in your head.
When I personally get caught there, I don't actually see that as an option. It's not there.
Yeah, interesting.
The people say just ask. It's like there's like this block. It's not that I don't want help. I want help. Maybe I want help from certain angles or certain people, and there are always certain people, and you do it. A big for me. I know I can ask, but there are I still have mental blocks where sometimes, because I like doing things my way and fast and all at once, sometimes it's just easy to do it by myself.
Yeah.
I don't want help because it's, I have to wait for help. I want to do it now. And it comes back to getting out of my own way.
Yeah.
That really is me in my own way, me wanting to do it by myself when I could really hand things off or split things up and divvy things up. So,
because we've come from a culture of we lived in tribes, right? And everyone's got their place, everyone helps each other out, and I think that's this is a bit sidetracked, but that's a real big issue we have with today's society. And we're expected to live. Sometimes you got single parents with like 2 kids or whatever. There's no help there. Like whereas we've always had, other tribe people, other like grandparents looking after the kids. Everyone's kind of contributing to the tribe. Everyone's contributing. So they're more open and honest. They're more able to communicate because they've had to communicate. And I think that's a real big thing that we need to try and get back to, is get back to community, get back to like the herd mentality, get back to helping each other out, because that's what we are done for hundreds of thousands of years or whatever you believe, you know what I mean? So I think we need to be able to get back to being more connected without using technology, you know
so
what I mean?
I'm gonna ask a question down that right now. Now both Mike and I have grown up in religious backgrounds and are from religious communities as well. Now, as far as I see, it's either a culture-based community, like the race or culture that you're from, or the last remaining communities I kind of see out there are religious-based. How do you see people reconnecting as a community when this day and age everybody's driven by financial gain? It's either working or it's not working. No one's doing community jobs, community help in the same way that they used to be able to. That I was used to when I was growing up.
Yeah, I think that's like a brilliant question, and it's really hard to answer it like definitively or answer it in one sort of like fell swoop. But I think the whole, I think is it Rummy or whoever said, I think the smartest thing you can do is just work on yourself and do it for yourself and your family, and then hope that other people follow and hope that other people see that. And instead of trying to like change the world, just change yourself, right? And lead by example and
Be the change you want to see in the world.
yeah, exactly. That's the quote I was looking for, but it wasn't coming to me. But yeah,
Gotcha.
that's Hey, you thought of the fourth one yet was stoicism? So I think I just see a massive link between loss of connection and where we are as a species, and I think we need to somehow get that back. So maybe in your smart cities we can work towards getting culture back, getting community back. I don't know how we integrate that, but that's a good conversation. That's a good question that we can talk about, and something that I think's.
Fourth one is wisdom.
Is it?
Yeah.
Nice. So what's the first one?
Courage, wisdom, temperance, and mod. Nope. I already said that. Damn it.
I walked into that one.
Where's Jamie?
Well, thanks for that, Fat Hemi. That's for letting us know a bit about your story and that. And so I'll move to you now, Guy. What has been your experience with mental health, whether it's you, family, and what are some of the tools, strategies, or whatever it is that you've used and how's that affected your life?
A whole bunch of different things sort of flashed to mind. Being brought up in Israel, I used to get bullied a lot being a foreigner. Used to come home from school crying every single day. Until my dad sits me down one day, and this is actually a backstep a bit on this one. I was asked by my life coach to write out my life story, and he gave me a week to do it. And so as I was traveling, I was on the plane, I was writing my story, and I wrote this one point, which I'm about to tell you. And as I wrote this, tears came to my eyes. I'm sitting on a plane with a whole bunch of people around me, and all of a sudden, as I just write this one line, just tears came to my eyes. And I find it was a really, really definitive point in my life. It was when I came home from school one day, my dad just crouches down next to me and goes, "Look, that's because he's crying. He's been bullied, beaten up by a whole bunch of kids." He goes, look, if somebody hits you, you hit them back, right? And so I was, which is, hang on, let me clarify this a bit, right? Don't go. So, because I was brought up in a Christian school, you know, violence was obviously not approved on. I don't think any school approves of violence, but had that upbringing. I was never a fighter, but then that point there, when I sent that off to my life coach, he actually identified that and said, that is the point that you became a warrior. And he goes, that is the point that sort of changed your life, because then you became a fighter. Then you sort of stood up for yourself and you didn't take any shit, and got you in a little bit of trouble in life. You know, you got suspended from school for having a few fights and all that sort of stuff. But you're at this point here, you're protecting your class. At this point here, you're protecting yourself, and sort of highlighted these sort of points where I was actually like the warrior and sort of the persona of a warrior, sort of standing up and being courageous and not taking any shit. And then he goes, and then at this point here, you got done for a home invasion assault because you were trying to protect your sister, whose ex-boyfriend threatened to kill her and all that sort of stuff, right? So I went around 18 years old, doing something stupid. Me and my brother went around to the house and beat the shit out of this guy that threatened to kill my sister. Yeah. And he goes, and then you got arrested and you did your community service. And at that point there, you stopped being a fighting warrior, but you became a warrior for God, and you went into the prison ministry. And so then, because I got back into church after that, you know, they said, look, you got several hundred hours of community service. And I said, can I do it through the church? And that's what got back me into the church after the Italian mafia days, in quotation marks. Yeah. And so going through the prison ministry side of things, I was mentoring kids on both life, business, trying to inspire them to find their passion and all that sort of stuff as well. A whole bunch of stories around that. Absolutely fascinating, really interesting experience, which I did for about 4 years. And then now I'm trying to become a warrior with my legacy side of things. You know, just it sort of evolved and turned into what I'm doing now. But the mental health side that comes from that, with the waves and the cycles and the am I ever going to achieve this? Am I good enough to do this? Just the pressure and the expectations and the accountability of, I've got 200 staff across the group, you know, and I feel responsible for every single one of them. So it's a huge burden on, I mean, it's not just me, I've got a good team, you know, and like surrounding yourself with a really good team is what's enabled me to get to where I am today. Obviously could not do it on my own. But that pressure and that accountability and the times where I don't think I have enough money to pay wages, and I've gone through periods of having this right before COVID, for example, of having to make people redundant, and you know the effect that has on their life, and you know, that's a lot of stress and a lot of pressure. Yeah. And so that's when things, you know, sort of all these sort of tools that I've sort of developed, the stoicism, the reading, trying to do a bit of meditation in whatever form that might be, whether it be the gym or just going for walks in the morning or listening to a stoic podcast or, you know, that sort of thing. Taking time out for myself to rest and rejuvenate and not putting so much pressure on you. You don't have to work 7 days a week. You know, having one day off. You know, even God took a day off. Yeah. You know, and so having one day off a week, we actually get to relax and just do you. They're the sort of things that keep you sane. Yeah. Otherwise, you just go off the rails and you're not as productive or as effective. I mean, a mini holiday is the best thing you could probably do for yourself. Take a day or two off. You know, like
yeah, definitely.
2 or 3 days is always you need. So I used to take a lot of little mini holidays and go out to the country and get an Airbnb with no reception, just for 2 or 3 nights, and sort of just rejuvenate and reflect and journal. Man, I wish I journaled more. Like that is one of the things that I think is one of the most powerful tools you can ever do, because coming through sort of stories like where you've been through and tracking that and recording that and saying, hey, these are the things that worked for me in the past. Maybe I need to get back onto that again. Maybe I need to go to the gym. Maybe I need to do another psychedelic session. Maybe I need to do this. I mean, maybe I need to get off the antidepressants again because that helped me last time. You know, so actually flicking back and just reflecting on the life that you've had and where you've come from. You know, there's a lot of people out there with PTSD. I heard the best thing the other day was you don't have PTSD because that classifies as a disorder. That's an excuse. You have post-traumatic growth because look how far you've come from that traumatic experience. You know, and it's about changing that mindset and sort of seeing what things have affected your life and got you to where you are. Because me at 34, I've come through 34 years of chaos, both good and bad, but it was chaos. Yeah. Right. And people out there in much worse off situations than I have. I mean, you are still here today. What got you to where you are? You know, what's been the tools and what's been the tricks and journaling that as often as you can helps you to track that progress and track that growth. And so it's things like that that sort of I've got a book at home. And it's a nice, really leather bound with a little string around it, with recycled paper in it. So it's a really characteristic book, and I like opening that and just sort of flicking through and saying, oh yeah, I remember that. I did that. Oh, that was a shit day. I remember that one too.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, I know for me, I've done a little bit of journaling. It's something that I don't do very regularly, but something that is always on that to-do list. So, some tips for journaling. So, you just journal in the morning, at night? Do you journal just about your day, or do you journal about...
If you're sitting at a bus stop, if you're on a plane, if you wake up in the morning and having a coffee, having that quiet time, like if you can create it into your routine, awesome. Right, whether it be in a book, whether it be on your phone. On my phone, I got my little notes. I just go into my notes on my iPhone.
Yeah.
And I created a page called The Art of Life. Right, and anything I read in a book that I like, I stick in The Art of Life. And sort of one day, hopefully, I'll create my own book. It sort of tells my story. I actually got a few ideas for a TV series and shit on the chaos that I've been through as well. But yeah, so just even if it's on your phone or if it's in a book at home, if you've got the time, if you're there, try and build that into your routine. So part of the 75-day hard, you got to read 10 pages a day, right? So the other day I took my book outside, sat in the sun with my coffee and my journal with me as well. I read my 10 pages and did a little bit of journaling. Just whenever you can find time, just write down how you're feeling and what you're up to, and if you got that sort of 5 minutes, I mean, life is chaotic, right? So it's hard to it's hard to keep up with everything that you're supposed to do, even though you know you're supposed to do it, right? Like in the Bible, Paul says, I do all the things. I don't do the things I know I need to do. I always do the things I don't. I know I'm not supposed to do, but we're just humans. Like we can't be perfect. I'm pretty damn close, but there's that ego.
I think because I've looked into journaling a bit, and the journaling that I have done is, I do feel, because it takes time to write down or to type down your thoughts, then you have more awareness into your thoughts, and then they become you. It's almost like you create space for you to then critique your thought or put awareness into the thought, and then be able to adjust it to suit, or to know, well, that's not quite right, or that's, does that kind of make sense? Like, I feel like
very much so.
It slows your thought processes down and slows everything down, where you can then analyze it and take inventory on what your thoughts are, and then go, well, hang on, like, then you can spread more awareness or light on what your thinking actually is, and then be able to change it. That's the experience I've had.
I find if you ask yourself questions, the answers come to you. Right. So you can start your journal and just say, I usually put the dates down, and sometimes you can say, what am I up to? These are all the things I'm up to at the moment. How am I feeling about this? Instantly, this thought comes to mind. Write it down. Right. So if you ask yourself a question, you're always going to come up with the answer. Right. And if you don't come up with the answer, who cares? It doesn't have to be a big page. It might just be one paragraph. Right? It's just about putting out thoughts. Some days you have writer's block. And some days you can just sit there and stare at a blank page and think, nah, not today. Doesn't matter. But and that's if it's a routine kind of thing. But then some days you just got to sit there and you got to say, what the fuck is going on? Today I'm facing this shit, having relationship issues. All this stuff is going on. I absolutely feel like crap. Why am I feeling like crap? Well, this. How am I going to resolve that? Well, this. And next thing you got 2 or 3 pages of answers, and it's like, holy shit, that was rewarding.
Yeah, and like I said, I think it's because then you're taking the time to write it, which gives you, you don't get stuck in your head, like, you don't get stuck in there, because you're not actually creating any space to find the answer, because it's just so, whereas you're finding time to actually allowing the information to download, or whether it's through, your subconscious or whatever, to download and to slow everything down, and then you're more likely to get the answer.
It is, and it's also more so about the process than anything else, right? Like, don't think that this is going to be like perfectly written handwriting and all that sort of stuff. You look back at my writing, I guarantee none of you'll be able to understand what I said. Right?
Yeah, I'm like that too.
It's the thought process, and it's the self-discovery, which is another thing they say about psychedelics. The whole thing about psychedelics is discovering your thoughts and how you work and what you're up to, and where you're at, and that side of things, right? I mean, it's one of the most, journaling is like float tanks, same sort of thing. If you go into a float tank, they say it's the closest thing you can take to psychedelics, because you're in there and it's just you and yourself and your thoughts, and you're just floating.
So all your sensories have disappeared. So
exactly. So sensory deprivation, right? Is what the float tanks are about. But it is. It's just spending time with you and your mind, because you are the most important thing to not only yourself but to those around you as well. Like if you've got a family, like you need to discover who you are. And what's that quote that says, I feel sorry for anybody that doesn't discover the true potential of their own self. It's a Greek guy that says it. Yeah. So it's like, not just your body but your mind. If you don't discover how to maximize this God-given gift that you've got, have you really made the most of your time on earth, kind of thing? It's like discover. Like, I don't think science has really discovered the true potential of our brain, right? Like it's
certainly not. It's and even the top neuroscientists will tell you that we know nothing about the brain.
Yeah.
Like it's still such an unknown.
Yeah, and so spending as much time as you can sort of discovering what it's all about, and who you are is such a rewarding process and helps you in every single step of your life.
Yeah. So what's so give some examples, or give what has helped you discover yourself along your journey?
Well, as I said, stoicism has been a big part of it. Reading and sort of personal development, journaling, as I said, another big part of it. Meditation, as hard as it is, because you probably tell by how fast I talk and how crazy my mind is that my mind is very, very active. Using external tools to sort of really discover who you are, sort of nootropics, and I've dabbled in some psychedelics in the past before as well. Microdosing, that's a really, really powerful tool. I've got some friends that microdose often, that got them off of antidepressants too, because what it does is it disrupts your baseline, and so going through a journey like that will help you to break down those habits that you previously had, and then you come out fresh with no ties to either whether it be smoking or drinking and that sort of stuff too. So people who got off of those sort of addictions through the likes of psychedelics. I know there's a lot of studies going through Johns Hopkins University. If you want to look into it, MAPS.org, MAPS.org, which stands for Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelic Studies. There's a lot of research on there going into everything from depression to anxiety to PTSD. I went to the director's screening of a documentary called From Shock to Awe, which was a Iraqi war vet and his wife. Both of them were Iraqi war vets, and they went off and did ayahuasca. He went off and did ayahuasca for 4 days. He was on 98 prescription pills before he went off on this thing. They kept adding, they never took away. Right, I hate that about the pharmaceutical industry, or the doctors. They just keep adding and adding and adding. Right? So he went off and did 4 days of ayahuasca and practically came back completely healed. Like they followed up 6 months down the track. Sure, he still had some issues and stuff, but he said he was off all his pills. He was a better father to his kids. And he tried to get his wife into it, but she's like, "No, I don't want to do the purge. I'm too scared of the purge, and the vomiting and the diarrhea and all that sort of stuff that you get with it." Yeah. So she did one session. Like, she was also in Iraq, right? She did one session on MDMA, and she was completely healed, right? Like, just that one. It was developed because MDMA sort of helps you develop that self-love and that self-respect and that side of things too.
Yeah.
So there are a whole bunch of sort of research and documentaries going into that. I saw another one, High as Mike is another good documentary, and obviously that's a lot harder for people that are in construction industry and that sort of stuff now, but things like CBD that sort of help your anxiety and those sort of issues as well. There's America's legalized it, and it's sort of coming through and developing. I know it's legal in Canberra, but we won't go into that one either. But there are these external tools that can help as long as you use them as tools, right? And that's the most important thing. Use them as tools, because if you start abusing these tools, then the tools are going to abuse you too. That's
a great distinction, and I think my personal opinion, especially when it comes to something like mushrooms, like I've definitely done psilocybin in the past, and I've got some great realizations and have some really powerful experiences from it. But then I have been to a place where I was taking it too much. Like, I was kind of taking it, trying to get more out of it, but I wasn't actually implementing or doing what's already shown me. And then I had one experience, I think I was actually with you, Hemi, where we had some, and the mushroom straight away just like hit me and just said, "No more, stop, I'm not showing you anything else because you're not
You're not respecting
You're not respect. Yeah, right. So it's almost like they've got their own wisdom, or they've got their own internal. You know what I mean? Like where it's almost like you can't take too much of it because it'll tell you, it'll let you know. And I think that's
There's a really good book called Immortality, The Immortality Key, right? Joe Rogan does a podcast with a guy called Brian Morisco who spent 12 years studying the origin of religion based on psychedelics. And he goes through the history right from the start as to where it all came from, like the god of Dionysus and all that sort of things. And from a spiritual perspective, it's a little bit blasphemous, and you got to pick out the gems and these sort of things. But it was a fascinating experience to see how history used psychedelics, and it was part of
Extensively used.
Extensively, yeah. It was part of all their rituals. It was part of their livelihood. I mean, well, they say the 300-year witch hunt was the Catholic Church taking out all the botanists or the naturopaths that were creating these potions because they were passed down from word of mouth, right? And so that's a real sort of obviously spiritual, religious conflict there. But it's fascinating because they wanted people to have direct encounters with God, and not to have direct encounters with God unless it was through the church, right? And I've heard stories, I've got stories of people seeing God and having the most spiritual experience of their entire life on psychedelics. And it's
I know I definitely have.
Yeah. I mean, dabbling in the past, I've seen God several times, and I've had some solid messages from him that really sort of showed me that he's there for me, going through some absolute traumatic times in business and all that sort of stuff, and then coming across this experience where he says, look, I'm here, don't worry about it, just chill the fuck out. And I was like, oh, phew, the weight off my shoulders.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. But yeah, it is, I mean, as I said, tool. Do not abuse that, because it has to be respected, and it's all about set and setting. Back in the days, I used to take it out of nightclubs and stuff, and it was nowhere near what it's supposed to be, man.
No, 100%. And I've always done it in a ceremonial type of thing. I won't say always, because obviously when I was, 19, 20, I mean, obviously.
Parties.
But yeah, but I don't know, like in the past, or in recent times, I've definitely done it in a ceremony, done it with intention, done it with the right purpose. So I haven't done a lot of looking into the research, but I know there's obviously MDMA, there's ketamine, there's psilocybin, and there's obviously the ayahuasca and San Pedro peyote and stuff. So when they do these studies and you say like set and setting, so what do you know what the steps are, what the protocol is? Like what are they with a therapist? Have they got certain questions they ask them, or is it just they take it and they let them like listen to music? Do you know much about the study?
So
you've talked about it.
So one of my favorite authors is Tim Ferriss, and one of my other favorite authors is Tim Ferriss, and he delves into this, right? Because he had depression every 6 months for the majority of his life, right? He's got a TED talk on this, and he says that as soon as he started microdosing or taking psychedelics, and he goes, that was the last depressive episode he ever had, and depression run in his family. So that was huge. So I highly recommend checking that out too, so to hear his perspective on this. And he's got a whole bunch of different interviews on panels and that sort of stuff with doctors and people who have similar experiences. Like for the first time in their life, they pretty much saw color microdosing on LSD, I think it was. And they look out the window and they saw the birds and they saw the green in the trees and they saw the blue in the sky, and they never actually noticed that before sitting at their desk in their office, right? So it brought color to their life, and that just changed everything for the specific person who was suicidal. Right? And
brought awareness to the moment, I think. That's that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. So, going through these like getting into it, highly recommend having a guide, somebody that's done it before that can actually comfort you through those potentially traumatic times. If it's bringing out some dirt, somebody that knows what they're doing.
And that's the one thing I was gonna say too, is we're not recommending go out there and just willy-nilly take these things. Yeah, definitely do it with someone that's trained or someone that is definitely been in that realm for a long time, where they can support you through anything that could possibly.
Yeah, because I mean, obviously with this sort of stuff, there's a lot of risks. I mean, you can overdose if you don't take the right amounts. So you got to make sure your product is measured, knowing what you're taking and how much to take of what. Because what's that meme? You know, this mushroom killed Brian, and this one's made John see God, and this one, yeah, poor Brian. So it's making sure you got the right stuff and the right quantity of that product per dose and all that sort of stuff too. It's not just like here's a bunch of powder and go take it.
I think it's really exciting where we're going with psychedelics, and that was suppressed for so long by the government. Stuff like the stuff that they picking up now is stuff that they started to do 50 years ago, but they suppressed it. You know what I mean? So we're so far behind where we should be, but. Not to be pessimist or whatever, but I think it's really great now that people are getting open to things like this and using, because we need all the help we can get when it comes to depression, anxiety, and PTSD and all this, you know what I mean? Like, life is fucking tough. You know what I mean? Look, there's 3 of us here, and all 3 of us have had traumatic, like, you know what I mean? Something that's fucking derailed us, or something that, you know, we've all had it, and there's not many people you can talk to that hasn't, you know what I mean? So we need as many tools as possible, and that's part of why I'll, you know, do this podcast, so I can get as many tools and get as many experiences as I can from people, and, you know, what worked for them, because what worked for you may not work for me, or, you know, work for other people. So I think that's
as you said, I mean, to answer the question, it's all about set and setting. It's all about being in the right place, making sure that it is a calm, clean environment. When I say clean, I mean, like, you can sort of get these negative vibes and that sort of thing too, like making sure that you are comfortable where you're at. You don't want to freaking take it in a dirty motel in the middle of, you know, the red light district or whatever it might be, because you're gonna have a lot of negative energy in that area, you know?
Yeah.
So it's making sure that you are at peace where you are. Just put some good music on and just meditate for 6 hours. I mean, that's the best way to do it. It's just good music. It's not so much lyrics sort of thing, you know, sort of instrumental, potentially classical music, something like that, you know. There's some really good sort of you can get some really bad psychedelic music too.
Which people listen to in the clubs and wonder why they have that shit experience.
So it's about having really nice, calm, good music on in the background that's more so instrumental than anything else, that sort of can just take you on that journey. I think coming back to what you were saying before, a lot of the suppression of this sort of stuff is because of politics. You know, was it Nixon? Was it early 60s, 67? I think it was, where they're coming to. I think it was Nixon at the time, and said, "Hey, look all these amazing things that we've got with all the research that we're doing on this LSD studies and psychedelics, and how it's benefiting mental health." And that was during the sort of the start of the Vietnam War, where everyone's like, drop acid, not bombs. Make love, not war, kind of things. You know, they all came from the sort of hippie era, where these people were the sort of free thinkers. And it does. It just opens your mind, and it sort of allows you to think freely and
Take a step back sometimes.
Takes away those boundaries that you're sort of talking about.
I think the society's cultures and boundaries and that, and I mean, like, you talk about, like, getting stuck in your own head. I think we get stuck in the collective consciousness of you know, what life's supposed to be like or whatever, and it can just break down every one of them walls. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's almost like your ego is left at the door sometimes, you know, and just
and that's exactly it. Like, what they call it, ego death. You know, it sort of destroys that ego. It's like, it's a fascinating thing. There's a lot of study going into at the moment, and I really enjoy sort of keeping up with it and finding out what's going on and where it's heading. And obviously, it's legal at the moment, and so it's not something you can go out and just ask people on the street for product or anything like that. But it's it's fascinating to see where it's going, and I really look forward to seeing what it can do on the mental health side of things. It's as I said, maps.org, maps.org. Highly recommend checking that out to see what studies are coming out of Johns Hopkins University over in the States. Tim Ferriss has funded a lot of those studies. He really was one of the guys that sort of helped kickstart that. And he's got some really good tools in a book called The Tools of Titans, where he sort of talks a lot about it. Like, for example, ibogaine is used to help people that are on heroin addictions, you know, done in a clinical setting. People using ibogaine can actually get off the likes of heroin.
What is ibogaine?
Ibogaine is another root, kind of like ayahuasca. It's another root psychedelic, and so he's got some really interesting stories, and there were some people that are going through these studies, and it's fascinating where this is heading, and I think it's really going to help change us and our mental state as humanity as a whole. If we can actually apply these as proper tools in clinical settings.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Awesome. So I know we touched on your charity before. So is that's just like all the houses and all that type of stuff? So that's like the overarching.
So yeah, there's a couple of different avenues here. So I went through a period. Kind of sounds funny, sort of coming off this conversation, but I went through a period of like I think it was about a few weeks of like a chemical imbalance episode of depression, and I don't really remember whether that was sort of associated with anything like sort of taking psychedelics and that sort of thing, but to actually back that up, once you sort of get off that, make sure you get your vitamin D, get out in the sunshine, exercise, because you do drain your serotonin and you do need to pick yourself back up because you will go through a lull afterwards from the sort of chemicals that sort of rush through your body. So when you come out of a session like that, make sure you do supplement with vitamins and make sure you do
vitamin B12 is another good one too that gets stripped
just dose yourself up with a lot of good sort of vitamins that help your sort of mental side of things. Get lots of exercise and get a lot of sunshine, because otherwise you are going to go through a depressive episode after a session like that if you don't take care of yourself. And it's also very good to be aware, hey, I did this and I know it's affected my chemicals in my brain, and so coming out of that I need to make sure that if I do go through a depressive episode, I know it's just a phase kind of thing and it's going to come out of it. But I had several weeks of just a chemical imbalance or something. I mean, I was reflecting on my life saying, everything's good. Why do I feel this way? Like, there's no reason for me to feel like this. I felt like jumping off a bridge. It was that bad. I was crying. I was up at 2:00 in the morning, sprinting the streets just to try and get that anxiety out of my system. Like, I could not sleep, and it was a horrible, horrible experience. And that's why I was like, man, like, it sounds stupid saying this, but like, depression is actually a thing. It's not situational. It can be chemical imbalance. It could be anything like that. And that was the sort of realization and the experience that I went through. And I was lying there in bed one night, and I'm like, this is the battlegrounds of life, man. This is the battlegrounds of the brain. And then came from that. I was like, battlegrounds. And so I sort of searched and found the domain name battlegrounds.com.au, and I was like, maybe that's the name for the charity that I want to establish. And so then I went through that whole process, and we're developing an app, and I was working with counselors and psychologists to provide support to people that want to get on an app. And then through those hurdles of setting up a charity, the anti-money laundering, because I wanted it to be international, so I had to have every country I dealt with had to have that sort of anti-money laundering procedure policy that I was going to put through it. So I've got some lawyers helping. What do you call it when you get lawyers help you for free charge? It's like pro bono. You're doing some pro bono work for me to try and help get that off the ground, which is really, really cool.
I like how every time you want to know something, you go look at Hemi. Hey, Hemi.
That's why it's here, man. He's my genius.
Is that why you said Hemi needs to come?
Yeah. So he's also got a bit of legal experience.
The wrong type.
Yeah.
Experience.
Yeah. And so through that, it's because I've got the construction side of things, I want to develop sort of social housing through a charity. And so it's like a halfway house for people that either suffer domestic violence or end up just in shit for whatever reason it might be, where they can actually go to a place where they can actually have accommodation, a roof over their head, a comfortable bed, have a cafe downstairs. We can have counsellors sort of just there full time, so that people can just sort of drop in, have a coffee with somebody and say, hey, look, I'm facing these issues at the moment.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And just like a drop-in centre, like a community centre kind of thing, but like a really cool, because I've got an architectural business too, so make a really good vibe. You can either sit out the front with your counsellor and have a good chat and a coffee and just socialise, or you can sit out the back in a clinical sort of situation and have those
almost like a centre without the stigma.
Yeah, because you don't want to like, I want this to be like a
safe haven for people.
Not a safe haven, but not a place that you go to feel like, I need to go get help. I have to go to the thing, the clinic. It's not a clinic. I want it to be a hangout.
Because it's hard to ask for help.
Exactly right. Yeah, yeah. So pool tables and maybe have a game of foosball while you're chatting to a mate and saying, man, I'm fucking dealing with this shit at the moment. My missus is doing that, or my boss is doing this, or whatever it might be. I can't put up with my kids at the moment. They just give me so much stress. I'm a shit dad, whatever. Like, just a place where you can be you and just hang out and not feel judged or like you're there to get help. You're just there to hang out. And so that's the charity side. I also want to tie in with Battlegrounds, but also both the construction side of things, because I've got the tools to actually make this happen. And then through that, roll these out around the place where you can have these sort of drop-in centers. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, is that like close on the horizon, or is that something that's still a fair way
I
away?
would say, based on the sort of workload I got going on at the moment, it's part of my city development plans that sort of I'm sort of working towards. So the ethos behind everything I'm trying to do is create a platform for change. So these cities will be a city for change. You know, like as I said, reimagining the way we think and live, and keeping it closed circuit and sustainable and all the rest, and having that sort of vibe just roll out across everything we're doing. So I am getting closer to a position where I'm able to pull these off. Again, the charity side of things and the legal aspect of that, you know, I've been tackling that for a while now. So I would probably say within the next 3 to 5 years is when I'm actually going to have sort of these off the ground.
Yeah, cool. Definitely. Let us know. I'd like to be a part of it and help in any way I can,
Yeah, for
man.
sure.
So yeah, that'd be awesome. But one thing that you mentioned before, and I really want to reiterate and drive this home, is sunlight. Like, I don't think people really realize. I've been listening to Andrew Huberman a bit lately, and he's got his own podcast. He's a neuroscientist. He talks like real science based about sunlight and like how it affects absolutely everything. So I think, especially in today, like a lot of people don't work outdoors, they in office all day, and then so they, even in the car, they say like just the tinted from the windows, you still don't get actually what you can get from sunlight. So you go from your house, no sunlight, you know, to in your car, to in an office, to in your car at home, you're not getting that sunlight. And so it can affect everything from, you know, your serotonin to your circadian rhythm, so your sleep cycles, which sleep is absolutely, you know, that's one thing. For mental health, I didn't realize this, but every single mental health disorder affects sleep, or sleep affects it. You know what I mean? Like, them two are so closely tied. So I think, and if you get the right amount of sunlight, which then wakes you, you know, as soon as you wake up, they say you should go out into sunlight for 2 to 10 minutes to start up that circadian rhythm, so your body knows, okay, well, this is when I've actually, you know, woken up, and then it'll time that for then when you go to sleep, and same thing. So later on in the day, if you're someone that finds it hard to fall asleep, try to stay out of the sunlight, so then your body then goes, well, okay, it's night time now, I've got to start getting ready for bed, you know. And this is where the blue light comes in. Like, when we in that blue light, that stops our brain from going, okay, it's night time, because you're still getting that blue light.
I'm someone who's worked in dark rooms for a lot of years, having been in and out of photo studios, working in offices and different things.
Yeah.
And the last 7 days on the 75 hard challenge, being forced to go out and spend time in sunlight has actually noticeably made a difference for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it actually has.
Yeah, so there's a real life example of just how important sunlight is.
Because it's very safe to say I would have spent none of that time outside.
Yeah, okay.
None at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's obviously one of the reasons why he has put in there that 45 minutes has to be outside. It's not so much about doing exercise outside, it's just being the outside, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's getting that sunlight and just being out in nature and getting just, I know for me, like, surfing is like the ultimate, because the mix between salt water, like, it's got to have magical. We can't know all the benefits from it, because there's so much that I get from it that is not documented. I don't know.
I think it's just water in general, eh?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I think natural water, as opposed to like running water, if you're in a stream or whatever, as opposed to like still stagnant water. So water is massive. And then obviously when I'm surfing, I'm out in the sun. So getting that sunlight, and then because the sun reflects off the water into your eyes. So they're saying that a lot of there's certain things that your brain gets from looking into sunlight that you can't get any other way. You know what I mean? Like, it's just the only way you can get it. And
is it?
I read that years ago when I first was on antidepressants. They're like, you know, staring to the sun, like when the sunset or sunrise, like just stare into it for even if it's like 10 seconds or whatever. And they say like what your brain gets out of it is just incredible. And I remember practicing that, thinking, you know, this, and it did actually make a difference. Yeah.
Just don't stare at it too long.
No, no. Or I mean, obviously, if it's hurting, don't stop looking at it. But that's why you do it at the sunset or sunrise, so it's not so powerful, and you can actually look into it. And
so the Egyptians used to have pyramids that would be hospitals, and you'd go into the pyramid and you'd lie on this bed, and the pyramid would be built over a canal, and the sound frequency of the actual water reflecting through the pyramid was actually healing to the person based on the frequencies that they were using. And so just the sound of trickling water is also very not medicinal but healthy.
Well, I didn't know that one. That's that's a cool little fact. So I suppose that comes down to like sound and the sound frequencies and there's a lot of healing modalities where people are using like drums and certain symbols and certain sounds, and it makes sense, like because your body is matter. You can use sound to break that glass. So you can use sound to if you've got internal knots in your body, or internal there's knots in your chakras, or stuff's not flowing. You can use sound to break through them, and that's probably going way too spiritual for some people, but that's something that I'll definitely look into. But
yeah, frequency is a fascinating thing, absolutely fascinating. But that's another rabbit hole in itself.
Going down energy and frequency. I think it was Nicholas Tesla say, if you can work out, the frequency, you'll work out the entire universe. If you can work out what, because energy, everything is energy. Like we think, this is matter, but people don't realize that. Was it 99.9999 13 nines is actually empty space in that table, or in us right now.
Yeah.
So the distance between every molecule or every atom in our body is about the same distance per size as the distance between every star in the universe. You know that?
No.
So we look up there and go, all empty space.
Yeah.
But this is the same.
Yeah.
But it's just that they're so close together.
The size, yeah.
Yeah.
What was it you said today? The consciousness in the universe?
Oh, the universe was conscious.
Yeah.
And your thoughts were, I asked if we were the thoughts.
Yeah.
So and then they say that every atom is 99.999% empty space too, because it's just a proton or nucleus, and then like an electron going around the outside.
Little galaxies.
Yeah. So basically we are empty space, but because we vibrate at a frequency that obviously like when a fan goes really fast, it looks like it's one thing. That's just what's happening here.
Yeah.
So that to me, that just proves that frequency, or we are basically energy or a frequency more than what we are matter. Even though we think we're matter, we're actually not. So that's why energy and frequency is so important. And we use stuff like sound, and that affects us so much because we are essentially energy, and sound energy can then affect our energy.
Yeah. The way that works across your whole sort of lifestyle and who you are and how you become too. Like remember the times where I feel like I'm absolutely primed. Like I'm exercising, I'm eating healthy, I'm getting enough sunlight, just life is good. And when you're absolutely primed, you feel like you can burst energy just out of your body. Like you literally feel like, I remember this one time I said to my life coach, I said, right now I feel like I could walk into a room and blow people away with the amount of energy that I've got. Just like inside me, it's like feel just want to explode. And obviously that's when everything is going right, which is very rare.
It's funny. I was listening to, I can't remember who I was listening to now, but he talks about when you are like when everything's going fine to not get cocky or not to get that ego, because it's almost like you're preparing for the next. You know what I mean? Like so, you got to be when life is high, you've got to be here, and when life is down, you got to find that balance of what I mean. Like don't get too. Like be like the river, what does Bruce Lee say? Be like water, just flow with, all these things are going to happen. Like when you're up, don't think it's always going to be up forever. And then when you're down, same thing. It's not going to be like there forever. So having that balance, I suppose, can keep you grounded and keep you
riding the waves of life.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I say that's another sort of a bit of advice when you sort of go into those psychedelic journeys too, is just ride the wave. Because you're going to go through you're going to go through a storm.
You don't get a choice after.
So you just got to ride the wave. Don't try and control it. Just ride the wave.
Yeah, I've definitely helped some people through their journeys because, God, it works in mysterious ways, doesn't it? That stuff, yeah. I remember I took it with a person once, and she was I was like in my meditation, you know what I mean, like going through some stuff, and she's like, "Oh, this stuff's not working. Like, it's not doing anything. Let's go do something." I'm just like, "Just let me have my half an hour," you know what I mean, and then we'll go do something. But I'm feeling that I need some, me time, some, and then once I sort of finished with my time, I then were like, okay, cool, and then it just smacked her, and she just like bawling her eyes out, like, oh, and she reckons she had like 10 years worth of therapy in like an hour.
Wow.
Just all the stuff that come up from her past that she didn't even realize was an issue, but it was. She just stuffed it down that far, and and just to be able to hold space for her and hold her and just be there and just sort of be able to coach her through. But I thought it was really funny how it's almost like the mushrooms knew that, okay, Ryan needed his time, but then when his time's over, like it was now her time, and like I need Ryan to be good enough or to be in a state where he could support her through this. You know what I mean? And like you can't tell me that wasn't. There's something
divine.
That wasn't behind that. That's just divine grace or timing or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, it was a really cool experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Life is a journey, eh?
It definitely is. It definitely is. So I always ask at the end of the podcast, because I think we've definitely covered some good topics and some good stories. So if there's one piece of advice that you could give to anyone that may be struggling, whether it's financial or anything, is there one like key like little takeaway that if you could give someone something, what would it be? I know it's a very loaded question, but you've both done very well today in giving some tools and strategies and context and showing people, because we all go through stuff, and I think sometimes we feel like we're the only ones when we're going through it. Like we're like, no one else is struggling. We're like, fuck off, a lot of people are, and it's just having that awareness that we're all going to go through stuff, but you just need to have the tools, strategies, and the support of friends and family, and be able to open up to that. So
talking to someone who's never read a book in their life.
Hey.
Coming from someone who's never read a book properly in their life, I discovered audiobooks.
Yeah.
But if I was to give one piece of advice, I would say read.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I think
audiobooks, whatever it is, remove yourself from the television, the things that are trying to push into you.
Yeah.
And just
seek your own information.
Seek information, whatever the information.
Yeah, 100%. Like that 75 hard is.
It'll find you.
Yeah.
You might go looking over there, but the other information, or you will find the other information. You'll find other things along the way. So I would say get hungry for information.
Reading audiobooks.
Absorb information.
Cool. Yeah, that's a really powerful one. That's something that I was the same. I never read a book until I was 27. Even at school, when you had to read a book, I was like, I'm not reading that. I asked everyone else, what was this book about? And then just try and write an essay on that. Like, no wonder why I didn't pass. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I never read a book until 27, and then I got into a network marketing company, which taught me so much. I know it gets a bit of a bad rap, but I learned so much from a network marketing company. And that was their big thing was leaders were readers, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna try this reading shit, and it does, like everyone learns differently, and there are exceptions to the rule, like Hemi, but most time, because your awareness when you're reading is 100% on reading, you absorb, I think it's like 40% more of the information as opposed to listening, because generally when you're listening, you're driving, you're doing other things, so your awareness isn't quite, so you don't retain as much of the information. And for me personally, if I read a book and it's awesome, I'll read it again straight away afterwards, and I can retain like most of the information if I read a book twice straight away.
Reading's been a challenge for me. It's not something I've been able to just pick up a book and just read. I read all day for information, whether it be on websites, on my phone, on different things I'm researching at the time. But when it came to reading a book, I really struggled. So there are a few different tools that that helped me. One was I wrote the book. I wrote what I was reading. That was the first attempt.
Yeah, right. That'll take forever.
It did, but I retained it.
Yeah.
My reading retention, that book retention came right up high. The next part was I highlighted.
Yep.
And then the one I do more now, because I'm not the fastest reader, is I get the audiobook at the same time, I speed it up, and I have them read it to me while I read the book.
That's some
great
great
I
little
can
tips
motor
and
through
tools there.
books at that speed now because maybe I'm
Obviously not driving, everyone. Make sure.
yeah. But reading having it read to me while I'm reading at the same time has actually brought up my own reading speed as well.
Of course, yeah.
But I can also think about things and then catch up to where they are in the book. So I'm doing more books faster. Like I went from reading 0 books to I think I've done 160 in the last 24 months.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's cool.
Yeah.
Actual physical reading books.
Oh no,
Or
just
audiobooks.
between audiobooks and reading books.
Yeah.
But I've from doing 0 cover to cover, I've done 160 in the last 24 months.
Yeah, wow.
Awesome.
Yeah, nice.
So it's been a massive life change.
Yeah. I can't recommend that highly enough. So that's a great one.
Yeah, nice. My bit of advice would probably be it's not what you know, it's who you know, because you can always ask for advice, and that's again asking for help. Finding a mentor. So my mentor is an 85-year-old Jewish guy who's got one hell of a story, and finding somebody who's in a position that you want to be in and just go out there and just say, hey, look, can you guide me? Can you coach me? Can you mentor me? Whatever it might be. And that's I think because they can give you all the tools and tricks, and it's like having your own personal sort of teacher. It's somebody that can sort of help you to get to where you want to be based on their life advice. Generally, somebody that's older and more experienced in a position that you want to end up in, because you are, it says in both the Bible and business, it says you are the equivalent of your 5 closest friends. And so show me your friends, and I'll show you who you are. Right?
Yeah, definitely.
And people have numerous times said, I never became a millionaire until I started hanging out with millionaires. And because you just sort of learn their ways and you learn their mindset, and you learn their mentality.
Yeah, if you hang out with 100-airs, you get 100-air ideas. If you hang out with millionaires, you get millionaire ideas.
Yeah.
Who said that? Jim Rohn, I think, said that. Yeah,
so it is. It's not necessarily what you know; it's who you know, and then through who you know, you become. That there becomes what you know.
That's a great one.
Yeah. So it's it's just asking for help. And it comes to that, and that just applies to every area of your life, right down to communication, in your relationships and all that sort of stuff too. So it's ask for help, find a mentor. And surround yourself with the right sort of people. I think the thing that made the difference for Hemi and I in our lives was getting out of the environment that we were in.
Yeah,
and that's with the surrounding that we were in. We were hanging out with people that were drinking for weekend. That was our culture.
And there were probably multiple stages of that. The first stage for me was getting out of New Zealand.
Yeah,
but I brought some of that culture with me. His name's Guy. But no, I brought a lot of that culture with me, and I expected it to change, and I was too busy looking back at everyone that was the same, not realizing that I brought some of that same across with me, and it took another
year or two to get out of it.
10 years. Yeah,
10 years.
Almost 10 years.
Yeah.
So my biggest change was probably in 2011, 2012 when I did start to drink by choice, rather than drink because it was a weekend.
Yeah.
Not bad.
And then it did roll, depending on life and situation, different things.
Course.
But then I tend to have removed alcohol now, not because I'm against alcohol, because it steals time from what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I could be doing other things. I feel guilty because there are so many other things I could be doing, and I'll probably enjoy it more.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. No, that's great. Look, thank you so much for your time, Guy and Hemi. I know both of you guys are very busy, and so I do really appreciate you guys coming along and imparting your wisdom onto the Neuronirvana podcast. So thanks a lot for coming.
Thank you, man. Thanks for everything you do with Neuronirvana.
Cheers, eh?
Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Neuronirvana podcast. If you like what you heard, please like and subscribe. Also, if you'd like to know a bit more about us, jump on Instagram, Neuronirvana_, and Neuronirvana on Facebook. Also, if you'd like to check out our services and if we can help you in any way, jump on our website, neuronirvana.com.au.